What games do you think of when talking about all-time bestsellers? If you were to say Minecraft, GTA 5 or the original Super Mario Bros., you'd be absolutely correct. These three games combined sold over 600 million units, and that'll make any games publisher happy. But what about games that don't sell too great, even if they were well received by critics? Well, don't worry guys, I've got you covered. My name's Senor Donut, and today we'll be looking at 5 of the worst selling video games. The first game on the list is System Shock 2. The game combined RPG, horror, as well as FPS elements to form its core gameplay. You would play as a soldier on board of the Von Braun starship, which has been completely hampered by a genetic infection. There are dead crew members scattered around, and you're on the hunt to work out exactly what's happened, whilst being taunted at every step by the AI known as Shodan. There were a variety of melee and projectile-based weapons that would bolster your arsenal, as well as upgrading your skills by using cyber modules. These were obtained by completing objectives. Development for the game began in 1997, with it originally being called Junction Point and having nothing to do with the original System Shock. However, when the game was pitched to Electronic Arts, they suggested rebranding the game as a direct sequel to System Shock, as they own the rights to the franchise. The development team agreed and started making changes to the story to incorporate the game's new direction. By this point, the game had already taken 18 months to develop and cost the studio $1.7 million. EA gave the developers an additional 12 months to make all of the story-related changes to the game. System Shock 2 released on Windows in August 1999 within the United States and the UK in September. A port was originally planned to release on the Dreamcast, but this was later cancelled. The game did receive high praise from critics, with IGN giving it a 9, Metacritic a 92, and GameSpot an 8.5. It also received several awards, including 7 Game of the Years, and was a runner-up for several others. You're probably thinking, how did such an awesome game get on this list then? Although the game did review well, it sold less than 59,000 copies by April 2000. For this reason, it was considered a commercial failure. Next on the list is Conker's Bad Fur Day. The game was a platformer developed by Rare Studios, who had worked on GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie, and Donkey Kong 64. You play as Conker, a squirrel that likes to drink as much as I do. For Conker to progress to each level, you'll need to obtain some cash, which is rewarded by defeating bosses, racing opponents, as well as solving puzzles. Conker's way of dealing with enemies was hitting them in the face with a frying pan, which by the way is absolutely hilarious. There was also a multiplayer mode which featured a traditional deathmatch, a racing mode, as well as a heist that would see players robbing a bank. The game's development started in 1996 following the success of Super Mario 64. The studio originally wanted to create another platformer with a cutesy squirrel as the main character. However, Rare received criticism for their kid-friendly based games. With the market being saturated with Mario 64 style platformers, they decided to take the game in a new direction. The game would be changed to depict more violence, feature a raunchy world, as well as mature humour. Nintendo did require some content to be cut from the game, including some cutscenes of Pokemon and a KKK based joke. Nintendo also didn't like the idea of Conker using a chainsaw to cut the N64 logo in half, but this was ultimately left in the game. Conker's Bad Fur Day released on March 2001 in the United States and April across Europe. The game had an M rating due to its animated violence, sexual themes and profanity. Reviews were also positive, with Metacritic awarding it a 92, IGN a 9.9 and GameSpot a 9.3. The graphics were praised as the best on the Nintendo 64, the audio and voice acting were top notch, with the naughty jokes being funny and well delivered. But despite these positive reviews, the game only managed to sell 55,000 copies during its first month of release and branded a commercial failure. The game sells for hundreds of dollars nowadays, so if you do have a copy, I recommend holding on to it. At number 3 we have Daikatana. The game was an FPS developed by Ion Storm, with 2 of the studio's founders, Tom Hall and John Romero, previously working for id Software. They'd worked on Doom, Final Doom, as well as Quake, and were well known within the gaming industry. You would play as a swordmaster named Hero, travelling through time to places like Japan, Greece and Norway in order to fix history of the powerful sword known as the Daikatana. There were 25 different weapons that the player could acquire, a skill system to level up your stats, as well as a multiplayer mode. The development of Daikatana began in 1997, being influenced by games such as Chrono Trigger, as well as the upcoming Zelda title, Ocarina of Time. A budget of $30 million was used to fund its development, and would be built using the Quake engine, but halfway through the development process, they decided to switch to the newer Quake 2 engine. Due to these complications, the developers ran into programming issues. This resulted in the game's projected release date of 1998 being delayed. There were further issues when approximately 20 staff decided they'd had enough and quit their jobs at Ion Storm. Daikatana released on the Nintendo 64 and Windows from March 2000 in Japan and around the world in the upcoming months. The game had already received bad press in 1997 due to an advert claiming John Romero would make you his bitch, as well as the demo performing very poorly at the 1999 Electronic Entertainment Expo. To make things even worse, the review scores were in, and it wasn't looking good for Daikatana. IGN gave it a 4, GameSpot a 3.7, and Game Rankings gave it a 42%. If you thought it couldn't get any shittier, then you're wrong, as things can always get a bit more shit. So go and grab some toilet roll, as it's about to get real shitty in March. For Daikatana to even make a profit, it would have had to have sold over 2.5 million copies. The game sold 8,000 copies on the PC by July 2001, and domestic sales of 40,000 units by September 2000. Up next is Babylon's Fall, developed by Platinum Games. You know, the studio responsible for for Bayonetta, Nier Automata, and Astral Chain, the game was an action RPG in a third-person perspective. In true RPG fashion, you could purchase new gear and upgrades, complete quests, and interact with other players in the main hub. You could play with up to 3 additional players via co-op matchmaking, or make your way through the game as a solo. There were several melee and range-based weapons to support your killing prowess, and you'd be rewarded at the end of each level based off of your individual performance. So, if you were downing enemies quickly and making the most of your dodges, you'd stand a better chance at that sweet loot, baby. Production for the game started in 2017 following the release of Nier Automata. The devs wanted to expand on the combat of Nier whilst also incorporating multiplayer elements. Due to the game being published by Square Enix, Square allowed Platinum to use assets from FF14, which to this day is a very successful MMORPG. The game was revealed in 2018 and set to be released in 2019. This was delayed due to the pandemic and issues with incorporating online play. In the original revealed trailer, the game appeared to be a single-player title, but when demonstrated at E3 2021, the studio stated it was a live service game. It's fair to say this fucked off the community that wanted the game. Babylon's Fall released on PS4 and 5 and Windows on March 3rd, 2022. However, the critics weren't happy with this one. IGN gave it a 4, Metacritic a 41, and Push Square gave it a 3. Metacritic stated it was one of the worst games released in 2022. Destructoid said the game was outright boring, with Rock Paper Shotgun claiming it was needlessly confusing. The game reached an all-time peak on Steam with 1,000 players in March, and this hilariously fell to 1 player a month later. If that 1 player is watching this video, I commend you for your dedication. The PS4 and 5 versions combined sold 5,000 copies, which is frankly awful. A few months after release, Platinum stated there would be no more development on the game, and in February 2023, the servers were shut down. Can we drop some Fs in the comments for the people that bought the digital deluxe edition, who essentially had their pants pulled down and cash stolen? The last game on our list is Sunset, a first-person game that can be described as a walking sim. You play as Angela, who's an American citizen visiting a country called Anchuria, and no, this isn't a real country. She's curious to find out about the civil war in the country as well as its dictatorship. As time progresses, several changes within the house and city start to occur. Sunset's development started in 2014, but they'd already created an early version of the game back in 2005 called The Apartment. It was originally supposed to be a romance story between Angela and another individual at the apartment, but later changed to the day-to-day life of a person living amongst a civil war. The game was funded via a Kickstarter campaign with a goal of $25,000, but would go on to surpass this goal as close to $70,000 was raised. The added funds allowed the studio to work on new animations, artwork, as well as expanding on the game's plot. The game released on PC on May 1st, 2015, and review scores were relatively positive, with Metacritic giving it a 65, GameSpot a 7, and IGN an 8. It was praised for its portrayal of war as well as its story narrative, but Game Informer stated the game was a humdrum and ridden with technical issues. But there's a reason the game's on the list, right? Sunset sold 4,000 copies in its first month, and over half of these were reserved for Kickstarter backers. Following the poor sales, the studio stated they would not release another game. Some of the reasons it failed included technical issues, it being unengaging, and having questionable design choices. Sunset was nominated for a Game Award in 2015, but yeah, they didn't win it. Ladies and gents, subs and non-subs, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. You've heard it all a million times. All of my socials can be found in my description. And remember, I'll never be a real YouTuber until I've released an apology video. Or 2. That's all, guys. Peace out.